are safe.
President Trump then turned to taxes, saying reform means American companies will no longer be at a competitive disadvantage with those based overseas.
Under my administration, the era of economic surrender is over, and the rebirth of American industry is beginning.
Kevin Corke is live at the White House with more on what the president has up his sleeve. Kevin.
Hey there, John. Listen, this was right in the president's wheelhouse, as they like to say in baseball, talking business and tax policy with effectively a group of his peers. We're talking business owners and CEOs. The president, of course, talking about his tax reform plan, which would include the biggest, most beautiful, massive, largest ever in our country tax cut. Did you get all that? If you listen to the speech today, you could tell he was obviously quite enthusiastic about the idea. The president, as you know, John, believes that cutting taxes on small businesses and corporations, along with incentives to purchase new equipment, that is, without added tax burden, will simply put American business on more fair, firm footing for years to come.
We will cut taxes on American businesses to restore our competitive edge and create more jobs and higher wages for the American worker. The last major tax reform was passed more than 30 years ago in 1986 with a large bipartisan majority. That sounds so nice. Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah, it would be nice. It's a whole new world out here in Washington compared to 1986. Now, another major element the president has been talking about is this idea, John, of repatriating massive amounts of money that have been parked overseas because of existing U.S. tax policy. Here's what he had to say about that.
Our framework, and you have to remember, you see what's happening with companies and offshore, encourages American companies to bring back trillions of dollars in wealth parked overseas. Our current tax code actually punishes companies for keeping their headquarters in America and discourages them from bringing back the profits they earn overseas. Republicans and Democrats have always said we want that money to come back. So they all agree, and they still never got it done. We're going to bring everybody together, and we're going to get that done.
Now, clearly the White House is expecting more Democratic support for this idea of major tax reform. It won't be easy, and it certainly probably won't be as difficult, perhaps, as pushing the boulder of health care reform up the muddy hill. But they are confident they'll get just enough Democrats to make it happen. We'll see, of course. Stay tuned. John?
All right, Kevin Corke at the White House. Kevin, thank you. So while President Trump is hoping to make tax reform a major legislative win, he backed the losing candidate in this week's Senate primary runoff in Alabama. Conservative challenger Roy Moore defeating Senator Luther Strange, who the president endorsed, as did Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. Now, that is raising all kinds of questions in Washington about the prospects for mainstream Republicans in the 2018 midterms. But Roy Moore calls his victory a win for the president also. Listen.
Together we can make America great. We can support the president. Don't let anybody in the press think that because he supported my opponent that I do not support him and support his agenda. As long as it's constitutional.
Joining us now, James Holman, national political correspondent for The Washington Post and author of The Daily 202. So as Republicans look at this Roy Moore victory, what's on their minds, James?
All the moderate kind of traditional establishment Republicans in Capitol Hill are freaked out this week. Tuesday was a very rough day for them. Not only did Roy Moore win, who they're very concerned about, also, Bob Corker, the Senate chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee, a moderate from Tennessee, announced his retirement. A couple of weeks ago, one of the leading moderates in the House announced his retirement. There are some other senators and congressmen who everyone here is watching to see if they're going to retire now that Roy Moore won in Alabama, that maybe this is a bad environment to be an establishment Republican because there's so much anger and frustration that so little has gotten done here in Washington. So there's a kind of a general despondency among moderates and a fear, even kind of people who are establishment conservatives like Jeff Flake in Arizona are very, very vulnerable in this environment. So a lot of concern coming out of this week. And a feeling that this, that $10 million was spent by Mitch McConnell's allies to try and stop Roy Moore in this primary. They were unsuccessful. That you're not going to be able to buy your way out of this problem. That's the mentality on Capitol Hill.
Well, Senator Jeff Flake is one who expressed some concern, I guess is the word for it, about Roy Moore's nomination. Says he doesn't share my politics, even though they are of the same political party. What's that all about?
Yeah, so it was very, very funny, John. I was walking around, you talked to senators the day after that election, and a lot of the establishment Republicans wanted to pretend like Roy Moore didn't exist. Some were saying, Roy who? They were, when you asked them about Roy Moore's position on some of the social issues, they kind of feigned ignorance. They don't, they're excited to have another Republican vote, but they certainly aren't embracing him. And what the concern about him is that he's going to be, again, this is the concern among establishments on Capitol Hill, that he's going to be another figure who sort of throws sand in the gears, that he's not going to want to compromise and make big deals with Democrats. And frankly, a lot of Alabama voters would say, good, we don't want that. But the concern is that you're going to have someone else in the Senate who's not interested in being a deal maker, and the chamber's already so polarized. There's already so much partisanship that could make it hard to get things done. On the other side, there are 10 Democrats in the Senate up for re-election next year in states that Donald Trump won in 2016. A couple of them could end up losing, and it's very likely that you would have very conservative candidates replacing them. They're sort of more moderate Democrats because they have to get reelected in states that the president in some cases carried by 20 or 30 points, places like North Dakota. And so, even if you're a conservative and you want those things, what in practice it means is that there's going to be kind of fewer moderates in the Senate come 2019. That means less bipartisan deals, and that will change the fundamental nature of the Senate.
For years, 8 years specifically, conservatives in this country were chafing at the fact that a liberal Barack Obama was occupying the Oval Office. Now they've got Donald Trump in the Oval Office. Are those who were so disenchanted, I guess, with President Obama, are they sort of turning their anger on some of their own political leaders?
Yes, it's pretty remarkable when you look at the polling. I spent a lot of time talking to voters in the states. A lot of conservatives really don't like Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan. And Paul Ryan had a really good reputation coming out of 2012. He was the ideas guy in the Republican Party. And I think in some ways the president has turned a lot of his core supporters against Republican leaders. The failure to repeal and replace Obamacare, the failure to get a lot of other things done, that Trump has sort of effectively blamed them rather than Democrats for these failures. And they kind of have been reluctant to punch back too hard. They don't have the kind of platform the president does. And so they're kind of the ones left holding the bag.
Yeah, they don't have 40 million Twitter followers either, probably exactly. Combined. All right, James Hohmann from the Washington Post. James, thank you.
My pleasure.
Well, let's switch gears. A Fox News alert for you. At least 10,000 federal workers are now on the ground overseeing relief efforts in Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria. Frustrations have been growing amid a shortage of food, water, fuel, and other critical supplies. Garrett Tenney's live for us in Puerto Rico with the very latest. Garrett?
And Heather, you can tell that there are still obviously many parts of the island where communication is an issue. This satellite phone is the only way that we are able to communicate with you right now, because many of the cell towers, the majority of them, are still down. And yesterday we reported how FEMA and the federal government have been sending an abundance of supplies here to the island to help, but that a lot of that supplies is simply not able to get out to those towns that need it. It's stuck at the ports because of the roads and the drivers not being available to take it out. Well, today we went to one of these towns that is not receiving the help that it needs on the west coast of Puerto Rico, the town of Aguadilla. The mayor tells us his people have essentially been forgotten. Water here has become like liquid gold for the 60,000 people who live here, and the few trucks of water that come in each day always leave people wanting. For food, they're relying on the kindness of their neighbors and churches, which are able to feed just a few dozen people a day with rice and beans. FEMA announced yesterday that the city hall of Aguadilla was going to be the site of one of 16 distribution centers across the island. Well, we went to City Hall to see what that distribution center looked like, and we were told that that distribution center is simply the location that the mayor drives a truck to each day to drop off supplies. And the mayor tells us that one truck Is all the supplies FEMA is giving him to give to his 60,000 people simply a drop in the bucket?
I have one truck full of water, one truck for 60,000 people. It's not enough. We need more water supply so we can give it to the people.
And the mayor told us that this morning 3,000 people lined up for that food and water to be able to take back to their families. 2,000 of them walked away empty-handed, and he said that is why they so desperately need food, they need water, and he said they need FEMA to actually be here on the ground to help his people get what they need. And this is just one example of what many of the small towns far away from Puerto Rico's capital are experiencing and the growing frustration that they have. Heather?
And of course, the president will be there on Tuesday. And don't forget the U.S. Virgin Islands. 100,000 Americans live there as well. Thank you.
Danger in the national parks. Falling rocks hitting tourists at one of the country's most famous parks. One man is dead. 2 other people badly hurt. What officials at Yosemite are saying about the rock slides. And more reaction to President Trump's proposal on tax reform. Can Republicans in Congress get it passed? We'll speak with Senate Majority Whip John Cornyn of Texas. Coming up.
When we grow American manufacturing, we don't only grow our jobs and wages, but we also grow America's spirit. When we purchase products made in America, fashioned by our fellow citizens, we renew the bonds of national loyalty that link us all together as one.
President Trump highlighting the key parts of his tax plan just about an hour ago as he spoke before the National Association of Manufacturers. The president announced the $6 trillion tax cut plan earlier this week, saying it will shrink taxes for businesses and simplify the nation's tax brackets, making it easier for companies to invest and create jobs. Joining us now, Senate Majority Whip John Cornyn. So as the Majority Whip, it's going to be your job to count the votes and make sure that Republican support is solid. There have obviously been some notable defeats lately. How confident are you that you can get this thing through the Senate?
Well, John, everybody in the Senate, particularly on our side of the aisle, recognizes how important this is to the president, but more importantly, how important it is to the country. In terms of our global competitiveness, we have the highest tax rate in the world, which means that businesses that do business overseas don't bring their investments back home in their people and in their businesses here. But most importantly, perhaps of all, is this is about letting people who earn money keep more of what they earn. It'll enhance their standard of living because they'll have more money they can save or spend on education or on a vacation, buy a new car, make a house payment. This is about lowering everybody's tax burden and getting the economy growing again.
The charge from the other side that this is a giveaway to corporate America and to the wealthy. How do you answer that?
I would say that's cynical, and it's entirely predictable, because if you start looking at the plan, you realize that everybody will see their tax burden reduced, and everybody will benefit as employers can hire more people and wages improve as well. So this is really about restoring the American dream, making sure that we are a prosperous country and that the blessings of prosperity get handed down to future generations. This is our one chance to do that, and we intend to get it done.
Do you expect you'll get support from Democrats?
I certainly hope so. We've been talking to a number of them, and this is going to be a challenging process because what you'll see is we have to pass a budget first, and then we'll take up the tax bill in the Senate Finance Committee that I happen to be a member of. And we are going to be looking for every occasion to welcome our Democratic friends to help us, because a bipartisan bill would be a better bill. We could actually make it a permanent tax cut as opposed to just a temporary tax cut, and we'll see what they decide to do, but we would welcome their support.
All right, here's one of the charges. This reduces tax receipts to the national treasury by $5 trillion plus. We haven't had a balanced budget in years. How do you answer the argument that all this is going to do is blow a hole in the budget?
Well, that discounts what the impact of a tax cut will have on our economy. You hear people talking about pro-growth tax cuts. Well, that's to get the economy working again, to use the natural incentives that people have. If I get to keep more of what I earn, then I'm going to work harder, even harder than I do now. And we expect with 4/10 of a percentage point increase in gross domestic product that hole will be closed, and we'll actually be seeing deficit reduction, not deficit increases.
One of the proposals is that businesses that order new machinery, new equipment, new trucks, etc., would be allowed to write off the expense the first year and do that for 5 consecutive years. Explain how you think that's going to help the economy.
Well, right now, if you buy a large piece of equipment, you'll have to write it off over a period of years, or depreciate it, is the terminology used. But you're right. One of the things the president emphasized to the manufacturing community is that you can buy a new piece of equipment, write it off in the first year, which, of course, as you might imagine, would get them to update their facilities, become more productive, and help the economy grow and create more jobs in the process. So that's just one small part of it, but expensing of those sort of investments by small businesses, I think, will provide a stimulus to help the economy grow.
The middle class is the backbone of this country. The middle class has been shrinking. Is this something that you think would stop that bleeding from the middle class?
Yes, I do. We're talking about 4 tax brackets. Right now we have 7, but the most significant tax bracket we're talking about is a 0 tax bracket for couples who earn less than $24,000 a year. They will pay 0 tax. And then 3 other tax brackets. Right now the proposal is for 12%. 25% and then 35%, but everybody will enjoy the benefits, I believe, of this tax cuts through a growing economy, increased global competitiveness, and more take-home pay.
How long do you think it'll take to get it passed?
Well, my hope is we get this done by Thanksgiving or thereabouts, certainly by the end of this year. As many of our colleagues have pointed out, in order for the benefit to be felt in 2018, we really need to get this done in 2017. So that's my goal.
Would give Americans a lot to be thankful for if it happens and it works the way you described.
I agree.
Senator John Cornyn of Texas, thank you.
Thanks, John.
We shall see if that happens.
Shall. The devil's always in the details.
Exactly. Well, Senator Chuck Grassley threatening the FBI with subpoenas. Why the Judiciary Committee chairman is searching for answers to some critical questions concerning a slew of topics. Plus, a second arrest made just this week for another murder featured on one state's cold case playing cards. Details on that.
Right now, a break in a half-decade-old murder case to tell you about. Police say Hakeem Atkinson was arrested and charged with murder in the 2012 killing of a man behind an apartment complex in Norwalk related to gang activity. It's the second arrest this week in cases featured on Connecticut's cold case playing cards. Those cards are sold to prison inmates to try to generate tips.
Interesting. That's working. Well, Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley threatening subpoenas to members of the FBI. The Iowa senator wants to speak to 2 top officials from the Bureau about a number of topics, including Russia, the firing of James Comey, and the Hillary Clinton email case. Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge is following this story for us from Washington, and she joins us with more. Hi, Catherine.
Well, thanks, Heather. Senator Grassley or interview with these FBI officials, Carl Gaddis and James Rybicki. Gaddis is the executive assistant director of the FBI's National Security Branch, and Rybicki is the chief of staff and a former senior counselor to FBI Director Comey. The assistant attorney general wrote to Grassley 2 weeks ago and blocked the interviews on the basis they would likely interfere with the special counsel Russia probe. But Grassley says his questions do not present a conflict because he wants to ask officials about improper political influence or bias. Department under Loretta Lynch, the firing of FBI Director Comey, the Clinton email cases you mentioned, as well as the FBI's activities in the Russia case. Grassley and the committee's ranking Democrat Dianne Feinstein are making clear that their patience is running out with Paul Manafort, the Trump campaign's former chairman, who first agreed to be interviewed by their investigators in July, but it was canceled after the FBI raided Manafort's Virginia home the same morning he was scheduled to appear before committee staff. Both senators suggest a subpoena in that case is imminent.
Is there, in fact, an agreement in the Judiciary Committee to subpoena Mr. Manafort for documents and testimony?
There is agreement between the chairman and myself to subpoena Manafort if he won't voluntarily come before the committee.
That would be an agreement to subpoena him, not an agreement for him to show up on his own. You had said before that his lawyers essentially weren't returning your calls. Is that still the case?
I think that we'll have to make a decision when we're done with filling in the details.
So with that answer, Senator Grassley seemed to leave the door open to an 11th hour agreement for Manafort to appear voluntarily, but at least for now, they had the threat of those subpoenas hanging over that witness. The committee is also weighing subpoenas for others who were members of the Trump campaign team. Heather.
All right, Catherine Herridge, live for us. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, Twitter suspends at least 24 accounts after finding more than 200 of them linked to Russia. Coming up, our panel discusses the role social media might have played in foreign efforts to influence the 2016 election in this country. Plus, what kind of impact are the ongoing national anthem protests having on the bottom line of the National Football League? We'll break down the numbers ahead.
Well, right now, the social media network Twitter says that it has found more than 200 Russia-linked accounts believed to be spreading propaganda, and they've suspended many of them. Now, this comes as lawmakers are stepping up their questions about social media's role in Moscow's attempts to influence the 2016 election. Democratic Senator Mark Warner calling Twitter's briefing to lawmakers inadequate on every level. So let's bring in Wendy Osefo. She's a liberal political commentator and professor at Johns Hopkins University, and Ali Stuckey. She's a conservative blogger and a contributing host at The Blaze. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you, Heather.
So this is involving all sorts of social media. We're talking about Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Google. And if you just look at Facebook alone, 66% of Americans use Facebook. 88% of millennials use it to consume their news. So it's important what information they are receiving. Ali, how important do you think this is, and what do you think the influence was, if any, on the election?
Well, do I think it was morally and ethically wrong for Russia to try to interfere in our election by exploiting social media platforms? Absolutely. But what Russia did, anyone else can do. Anyone with access to a Twitter account or a Facebook account can create any kind of false ad. And ultimately, it's up to the individual to make their choices on not just who they're going to vote for, but which information they're going to believe.
Yeah, and on that point, Wendy, as I toss it over to you, Representative Adam Schiff, he had to say this about the information that they've received so far from Twitter specifically. He said that it did not address whether the tweets were targeted to particular voters in an effort to sway their choice for president. So a lot more investigating to do.
Well, yes, there is a lot more investigating to do, but based on the evidence, what we do know is that a hostile power interfered with our election, and that is not a partisan issue. That is an American issue. And furthermore, what we see here is that they were really targeting Hillary Clinton because they said that they wanted to both harm and possibly deride her from getting this election. But what's really important is this Oxford study that said 22 million tweets were found to be linked to Russian bots or WikiLeaks, and those tweets had false information, and it was higher in swing states. As Americans, it's incumbent upon us to ensure that when we are tweeting and that when we are having and passing along information, that information is correct. And we have to make sure we make this change in 2018 and 2020, because what this great nation has given to us is the right and privilege to vote for whoever we see to be a good candidate. And we want to make sure we vote with the right information, not from a hostile power.
And that study that you were talking about, it was specifically voters in 11 swing states, and
Absolutely.
It found that they got more fake news, more hyper-partisan information via Twitter than reliable news, especially in the 10 days leading up to the election itself. So, Allie, in terms of swaying voters in the specific swing states, what do you think about that?
Well, like I said, I absolutely think that's problematic, and I 100% agree with Wendy that this is not a partisan issue. We know that Putin wants to stoke the flames of division within the United States to try to lessen America's appeal. I absolutely agree with that. However, I do think it's also important that we don't get into the realm of censoring information that we either think is false or not false. I think that opens a can of worms into allowing Twitter and Google and Facebook to censor information that they might not like.
It is a very fine balance, and Twitter, I guess, is really coming under fire because they don't have the checks and balances. People don't have to provide personal information to open up an account, as we know. Facebook, though, they get all kinds of information about you, different sites that you go to, and all that kind of thing. So how do you protect personal information, Wendy?
Yeah, and I think that that's where we have this delicate dance that we have to do. We want to preserve the right for free speech. We want to preserve the right for people to be able to say and to tweet what they want. But we also want to ensure that these individuals are not bots. So I think it's really time that we come together in a bipartisan manner to look to see how do we preserve America's right to use these social media platforms, but to do so in a responsible way. Because, again, 2018 is around the corner. 2020 is around the corner. We all have the beautiful right as Americans to vote, but again, we underscore the fact this vote matters, and we want to do so with the correct information.
And it began with President Obama. It was built upon by President Trump. The internet and social media, a huge part of our elections moving forward, so we have to figure it out.
Absolutely.
Thank you both for joining us. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, Heather. Thank you.
A Fox News alert and a ban taking effect today on all international flights into Iraq's Kurdish region. The Iraqi government is banning those flights after Kurds voted for independence in a referendum on Monday. It comes as ISIS is still active in parts of the country and as the terror group releases audio said to be from its leader for the first time in almost a year. Ryan Chilcott is live from London with more. Ryan?
Hi, John. Well, that ban on all commercial flights in and out of Kurdistan went into effect about 2.5 hours ago. Just before it did, there were an awful lot of people in the airport in Erbil, that's the regional capital, that were getting on the last flights out. In particular, a lot of foreigners who have been told by their companies that they must evacuate for fear concerns for their safety. The ban was introduced by the government in Baghdad after Kurds voted in overwhelming numbers in a referendum on Monday to secede from Iraq. So today we had the Iraqi prime minister appearing on television saying that that cannot happen and that this ban, however, is not meant to starve the Kurdish people. Keep in mind, there are still land links between the north of Iraq, Turkey, and the rest of Iraq. So in addition to that, in Baghdad, of course, separate from the problem of separatism in the north, the government is still battling the Islamic State. That today is happening in the city of Hawija. It's just north of Baghdad. It is one of the last strongholds of Islamic State in the country. The prime minister announced that the military is now engaged in the second phase of operations there. And finally, analysts are still listening to that audio recording purportedly from the leader of Islamic State, al-Baghdadi. And I'll give you just two takeaways from that audio recording. In it, he calls on his supporters to attack infidels' media headquarters. And he says that American power around the world is on the decline. John?
Ryan Chilcott joining us live from London. Thank you.
Well, coming up, NFL protests. We're going to talk about that now a little bit more. And under the lights at Lambeau Field.
All the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming.
Did you see that? The Green Bay Packers, Chicago Bears standing shoulder to shoulder and locking arms during the national anthem. No player took a knee while fans chanted USA. But how is the ongoing controversy impacting America's favorite sport? In the pocketbook, Fox Business Network's Hillary Vaughn is live for us in Los Angeles with more on that. Hi, Hillary.
Hi, Heather. Well, protesting America's national anthem comes with a price tag. Last night, the Green Bay Packers beat the Chicago Bears, but the NFL took a big hit with a 13% drop in ratings. But players dropping to their knees hasn't necessarily driven ratings down more than they've already been expected to, because people are already tuning out. Viewership is down across the board for live sports. According to Nielsen, 2 million people that tuned in last year are changing the channel this year. The controversy is causing some consumers to cancel subscriptions to the NFL-owned channel Red Zone, and a customer service rep for DirecTV says they've had some customers cancel subscriptions to their Sunday ticket packages of NFL games, but for some, ticket sales are steady. A content analyst with SeatGeek says that's because the impact of fans boycotting has been evened out by increased publicity for the NFL. Restaurants in states like Texas, Louisiana, South Carolina, and New York are refusing to put on the game, and one businessman says he is pulling ads from 29 states.
I'm a patriot first, and this is about the flag. This is about the country. It's not about anything racial. We stand together for our country, black and white, and we stand for the flag.
NFL teams standing on the field became standard under the Obama administration in 2009, but while players continue to protest, their teams have profited from $6 billion in taxpayer funds that have gone to rebuild and build some of their stadiums. Heather.
All right, Hillary Vaughn live for us. Thank you.
A car goes over a cliff in California, careening off a road and crashing 300 feet below. Why both passengers managed to survive. Plus, are the days of taking multiple prescription pills over? A new medical breakthrough that can combine different drugs into one dose. How taking your meds could get a whole lot easier. A car goes over a cliff in California, and 2 people are lucky to be alive thanks to a good Samaritan. He was on his bicycle and witnessed the crash. In the video, you can see how smashed up the car is, 300 feet below the road where it went over. Crews were able to airlift the women in the car out. They were rushed to a nearby hospital. Both of them are going to be okay.
Very lucky. Well, the University of Michigan might have just revolutionized the way you take your medication. Now, they're called printed meds, a new technique that combines multiple prescriptions into one small dose. And not only that, but the way that you would take them would be significantly easier, too, apparently. Alice Benjamin is a clinical nurse specialist, and she joins us now to tell us a little bit more about this. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. And I have to admit, this is some tremendous work coming out of the University of Michigan. I mean, it's really going to revolutionize how we deliver medications.
Well, let's start first. Yeah, let's start first with the number of people that are on some sort of medication, because I found that remarkable. You said 7 out of 10 Americans take at least one prescription?
Absolutely. And beyond that, nearly 50% of people are on at least 2 prescriptions, and 20% of people are on at least 5 or more prescriptions. So you can see that the study, the work that's coming out of the University of Michigan is really going to be a game changer, because there's so many pills that people are taking. It really makes a difference when it comes to compliance. So if you imagine someone who has to take multiple pills, and as an ER nurse, I see patients on sometimes up to 20 medications a day.
Wow.
Now, to revolutionize that, and now to be able to combine all those medications and deliver it in something as simple as a dissolvable strip is amazing work.
Yeah, so tell us specifically about it. I know that the number of people also is increasing year over year. The number of people, I guess 48% in 2007, and that's up from back in 1999 and 2000. So how exactly will it work?
Okay, so the way that this technology works, they call this organic vapor printing, and what they do is they take the active ingredient in a medication, they heat it up so that it's evaporated, and they combine it with a gas such as nitrogen. And if you can just visualize this, almost kind of spray paint this gas and evaporated medication onto a surface where it condenses and then can be delivered by means. It's something that it's just pure medication. It doesn't have the solvents or the
say 5 different pills That would all be combined into this one strip, which is one way to take it, right?
Absolutely. So they could take your different medications, and this is very personalized. So whatever medication